Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you all are doing great. I formally want to welcome you in MCOM 201. Our today's lecture is Ethical Code of Conduct in Media. So, when we talk about ethical code of conduct in media, that means we need to look into the media practices, that how media is operating in a certain environment. So, let's talk about it, or what are the ideals for media and what is the ideal environment or the ideal modus operandi or the practices for media. So when we talk about ethical conduct in media, we need to look into certain things. So number one is seek truth and report it, because you as a reporter you need to tell truth, nothing but the truth, and report it. You should take responsibility of your story for the accuracy of your work. Again, verification is very much important when you are reporting, whether it's print medium or electronic medium, or you're reporting for online media. Verification is very much important. So when you release any information, when you release any story, before releasing it, you need to verify it, that whatever you are saying in that story, it's true or not. So try to use always original sources whenever it is possible. Let's say if you are covering story on COVID-19 related to a local hospital, you need to talk to the medical superintendent of the local hospital or the doctors who are working in that specific hospital, or patients who are admitted in that hospital. You just cannot write stories sitting into um, in your drawing room or in your office. You need to go on to the field, and you need to look into the facts. You need to remember this one thing: neither speed nor format excuses for inaccuracy. Whatever you are doing, there isn't or there shouldn't be any excuse for inaccuracy. So inaccuracy is a sin. Again, apart from accuracy and truth, context is very much important. Please provide context. Take a special care not to misrepresent or oversimplify in promoting, previewing, or summarizing a story. That means whenever you are doing a story, you need to take care that you do not misrepresent someone. If someone has said something, you need to write it in a way that it should look like that these words are coming from that person. That means you are not misrepresenting the facts or misquoting them. So always look into the context or the connotations, whatever you are saying. Gather update and correct information throughout the life of the story. So you need to maintain this practice throughout the life of the story. That means in the start, in the middle, and in the end as well. Okay, promises are not good in journalism. You should not make promises to your sources, but there are certain situations where you have to make promises, where you need to make promises to your sources. Let's say you make a promise to them that you will grant anonymity to them, to your sources. So that means that you will not disclose their name. Probably they will have fear of retribution, or they will have fear of losing their job or their life or something else. So because they are giving you inside information, so in that case you need to promise anonymity. When you promise someone anonymity, you should not release their name or at any cost. So be cautious when making promises, but you should keep them when you make them. Always identify sources clearly. The public is entitled to as much information as possible to judge the credibility, reliability, and the motivation of the sources. So you need to identify sources, but there are situations I can understand where you have some inside story from a government department where they might have fear that they are going to lose their job. or they will actually face some kind of punishment from high ups. So in that case, you need to grant anonymity. So, but before you grant anonymity to your sources, you need to look into the motives. That what are the motives of your source? That why he's asking for anonymity. Sometimes your sources actually play a double game with you. So because they are not happy with their department or with their uh, colleagues or with their bosses, and sometimes they give you incorrect or false information. So in that case, you need to look into the motives of your sources, that why you are actually granting them anonymity. So diligently seek subjects of news coverage to allow them to respond to the criticism or allegation of the wrongdoings. Avoid undercover. This is very important nowadays when we see, especially on television, every single journalist is going undercover. Undercover is not the option always you need to consider. When normal ways are not yielding, then you should actually go undercover. And when story is actually of worth public interest, then you should go undercover. But that should be, I would say, last resort. It should not. You should not do undercover uh, at the first point. So always avoid undercover or surreptitious methods of gathering information unless traditional open methods will not yield. So, and the information is vital for the public consumption. And you think that this information should, or this news should go to public, then you should go undercover. You should be vigilant and courageous about holding those with power accountable, give voice to the voiceless. That is again very ethical practice. You should not become a party, and you should support the open and civil exchange of views. Always support open and civil exchange of views, even views they find very hard to digest for the people, even if they are hard to digest for you, but you should actually give space to civil and open exchange of views. Uh, Recognize a special obligation to serve as a watchdog, because as a journalist, you are a watchdog, and it is your duty to point out uh, wrongdoings in public and government offices, seek to ensure that public business is conducted in open and the public records are open to all. For instance, if you are seeking information about health department or police, there should be records available for your consumption. You should provide access to source material when it is relevant and appropriate. Boldly tell the story of the diversity and magnitude of the human experience. Seek sources whose voices we seldom hear. Um, then avoid stereotyping, because nowadays journalists are being stereotypical. Um, as a journalist, you should examine the ways your values and experiences may shape your reporting. So never deliberately distort facts or the context, which is happening nowadays, because we see stories with the distorted facts and the distorted context. Context. So including visual information, clearly label is illustration and reenactment if you use reenactment in your story. Clearly label pictures if you haven't taken those pictures and you have taken that picture from somewhere else. Again, plagiarism is a problem. Never ever plagiarize facts. If you get information from some source, always attribute that source. So minimize harm. Balance the public's need for information against potential harm or discomfort. Because once you are doing a story, obviously it is going to inform someone and it is going to discomfort someone as well. So pursuit of news is not a license for arrogance or undue intrusiveness. So that means, let's say you are covering a story on child abuse. Obviously, it is important for public consumptions. People should know about this issue. But in that case, when you are covering that story and you are mentioning the name of the victims, probably that will be a great discomfort for the family of that victim. So you need to minimize that harm. So that's why we say we do not disclose names of domestic violence or people who face domestic violence, or those who are victim of child abuse or rape. So we do not mention their name because we want to minimize harm. Uh, as a journalist, it's not only your job to inform people, but you should be compassionate for those who may be affected by your news coverage. Because if someone died in a bomb blast, obviously, when you again and again show his picture on television, or again and again you mention his name, his family will feel bad. So use heightened sensitivity when dealing with juveniles, victim of sex crimes, and sources or subjects who are inexperienced or unable to give consent. So consider cultural differences in approach and treatment. You should recognize that legal access to information differ from an ethical justification to publish or broadcast. Sometimes you have legally you have access to some kind of information, but ethically, and no one is going to sue you in the court of law, but sometime ethically you have to decide whether you need to publish this information or not. So you need to think about it. So you have to realize that private people have greater right to control information about themselves than public figures and others who seek power, influence, or attention. Weigh the consequences of publishing or broadcasting personal information. So it is very important, though you have access to that personal information, but you should actually um, first think that whether it is important to publish or broadcast or not. So balance a suspect's right to a fair trial with the public's right to know. That means you should not declare someone uh, as a as they have done a crime, because at the start of their trial they are probably suspects. So obviously people want to know, but you should not declare them that they have done this crime. So consider the implication of identifying criminal suspects before they face legal charges. So when they face legal charges and there is a decision that has come through the court, then obviously you can deal them as culprits. But before that, you should deal them as a suspects. Consider the long-term implication of the extended reach and permanence of the publication. Provide updated and more complete information as appropriate. This is very important. You need to act independently, uh, and um, this is very much important. Uh, and you should disclose unavoidable conflicts as well. Refuse gifts, favors, fees, free travel, and special treatments. You should not take these kind of amenities from your subjects or from political parties. Avoid political and other outside activities that may compromise integrity or impartiality or may damage your credibility. Because nowadays we have seen every single television viewer is saying that this journalist is a party, that journalist is a party. Why this is happening? Because most of the journalists, they become part of political activities, or they become mouthpiece of some political party. Be wary of sources offering information for favor or money. Do not pay for access to news. Do not give them money, because obviously, for the sake of getting money, they are going to provide you with false information. Identify content provided by outside source, whether paid or not. Deny favored treatment to advertiser, donors, or any other special interest group, and resist internal and external pressure to influence your coverage. External pressure could be coming from any power group, like it could be a religious group, it could be a political party. Internal pressures could be you face pressure from your editor, or your um, publisher, or your senior editor. Again, you need to distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between two. So, prominently label sponsored content. Sometimes, obviously, newspapers treat news stories as a sponsored content, but you should avoid it. Transparency is very important, and accountability is very important. Consider that you are accountable, you need to be transparent. Explain ethical choices and processes to audiences, encourage a civil dialogue with the public, about journalistic practices, coverage, and news content. Respond quickly to the questions about accuracy, clarity, and fairness that may come from your readership or from your audiences. Always acknowledge mistakes because we are human, we make mistakes. If you have made a mistake in your news story, correct it promptly and acknowledge that mistake. Explain corrections and clarifications carefully and clearly. Expose unethical conduct in journalism, including within their organization. Abide by some high standards they expect of others. So if you expect others to be truthful, you need to be truthful as a journalist. So that was a short debate on um, ethical conduct of journalism. So I have uploaded certain code of conducts on your Moodle account. So if you see, um, there is a code of conduct developed by RTDNA. This is a one-pager code of conduct with 12 clauses. So just read it. It also deals with the things I have discussed in um, my PowerPoint presentation. Apart from that, um, I also shared another code of conduct, that is SPJ code of conduct. SPJ is Society of Professional Journalists. So you can actually look into that code of conduct as well. This code is also a very short code of conduct. It's around 10 to 12 point code. It's, I guess, more than that, like 15, 20 points. So you need to look into that as well. But it's one pager again. It's a one page of code. So look into that. So most of the organization, when they start business, especially news organizations, what they do, they usually develop a code of conduct, that how they are going to cover news stories. So if you look into prominent news organizations, you will see they have developed code of conduct. So I have shared another code of conduct that is from Media Reliance Code of Conduct. That is also uploaded on your Moodle account. So this code of conduct deals with three main points, like honesty, fairness, and independence, respect for the rights of others. So it's a 12 um, point code. So you can look into that as well. Apart from that, there is code of conduct from the BBC, IFJ, the International Principle of Professional Ethical Journalism. So there are several codes I have uploaded. So you need to look into them. They will give you an idea that how a media personnel or a journalist should practice in an ideal environment. I know this world is not an ideal place, but still we need to make this world an ideal place. So that's it for today. Take care of yourself. Thank you very much. Bye bye. See you in next lecture.